What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we are finally back after a bit of a long hiatus. So, what today's video is going to be is I'm going to be discussing the most likely Hall of Famer, in my view, from every current team, so they have to be on the team. Now, for this discussion, we will include 60-day IL players, just to be safe, just because they're still on the roster. It just makes sense to do that. But we will not include guys who are currently free agents. I was going to do this video back in, February or something, January, February, but we had the lockout and there were still a lot of players that were on the fence about certain things. Obviously there were a lot of free agents still. Like, we just saw Nick Castellanos. He was still a free agent. I don't remember. I think Simeon signed before the lockout, but regardless, it just goes to show you. So, I'm just doing the AL versus the NL All-Star teams. Might as well. It's our best chance to get to see the best players the league has to offer. So, always fun. But anyway, we'll see where we're at for if we're going to do two videos, AL and NL, or just AL right now and then NL later. But, anyways, I've already done NHL, I already did NFL, so I've been wanting to do baseball for a while now, but I just didn't get the opportunity to do it. So, without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the AL, of course. I'm going to go by division, so we're going to start with the AL East, and of course that has us start off with the Baltimore Orioles. Now, obviously, Baltimore is still in a rebuild. They are nearing the end of their rebuild, so there's really only two, maybe three guys on this team that have even a chance of making the Hall of Fame in my viewpoint. But it's way too soon to say anything about Adley Rutschman. Love the kid, but no, not yet. So then that leaves you with essentially two guys that have a chance. And John Means, honorable mention, but we only saw a really good elite half season from him. So to me, it leaves you with Trey Mancini versus Cedric Mullins for the Baltimore Orioles. But with those two teams, with those two players, I'm not sure either of them will make the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Trey Mancini's a hot player right now. Everyone loves the story with Mancini. But I don't think he's good enough to be a Hall of Fame player. He's a power-driven guy. But this is the 2020s now. Everyone's a power-driven player. So, what he did, what he's done, doesn't necessarily help his statistics. So the only other guy, Cedric Mullins, I also don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He's had a very pretty good, but he's just, I'm mentioning him is because I think his skill set can translate to another decade plus because he's a contact hitter who does have a little bit of pop. Obviously, he hit 30 homers last year. But he's more of a contact-driven hitter who can hit you around, maybe in an elite season, he can hit just south of 300. Last year he was in the 290s. I don't think either of those guys are Hall of Famers. I think Adley Rutschman, if I had to bet on a current player on the Orioles roster to make the Hall of Fame, it would be Adley Rutschman, but it's way too soon to come out with Adley Rutschman. And of course, the Orioles are one of the toughest teams to get out. So at least now we go to the Boston Red Sox. Now, Boston does have a couple of players on their team that I definitely think have a good chance on making the Hall of Fame. And so let me get a couple of the honorable mentions out of the way real quick here. Well, there's actually only one guy that's really an honorable mention, and that's going to be there's a couple. So basically, the Red Sox infield excluding first base. So I love Rafael Devers. He's a great player, but he's too young. He's really had a couple of iffy years, and then in 2021 he really kind of broke out. He has kind of cut back. He used to be really a liability on the defensive side of the ball, but again, a third baseman, that's expected. He is a good player. He's hitting out of the world again this year. I think right now, he leads the league in hits and in particular doubles. So he's been a very valuable player for Boston. He's a doubles machine. He does get homers. It's not like he doesn't get on, he doesn't hit it out of the park. So I like what he can do, but it's just too soon to tell. If he can keep playing like he's playing right now in 2022, his age 25 season, right now his stat line has him hitting 335 with 14 homers, a league leading 23 doubles. If he can keep this pace up for another 5 or so years, he'll be in the Hall of Fame, no question about it. But it's tough. It's going to be tough for him. I don't know if it's going to work out in the end. Xander Bogaerts is a guy who I'm also pretty high on. So I'm doing these three guys, the honorable mentions, in order of how I think they'd get in. Most likely to least likely. Xander's always been a very consistent hitter, but consistency, the Hall likes consistency, but they want you to also kind of step up your game. They're more likely to vote you in if you have 3 really good elite years than a 6-year stretch of consistent years. Because, you're more likely to get an MVP award or something like that. Like these past 4 years, Xander's been in the MVP discussion. He's never made it higher than like 5th in the voting, but that doesn't necessarily hurt him. He's gotten the Silver Slugger Awards a couple times. He's been an All-Star a few times. So he's definitely got a chance. His problem is that he's going to be 30 at some point soon. I don't know if it's this season or next season. I think it'll be next season. So his playing time may be coming down. He might have to change his approach soon. But he's probably got a good chance on making the Hall. He definitely has a chance on making the Red Sox, I don't know if they do a Hall of Fame or a Wall of Fame or whatever they do, Circle of Honor, whatever they do. He definitely has a good shot at making that. He's been a great player for Boston. Now, the least likely of the 3 middle infielders is going to be Trevor Story. Trevor Story, his stat line, he's starting to produce now in Boston, which is definitely helping him out. But, at this point a month ago, people were starting to say, oh, Boston gave him a bad contract. That was a bad move by Boston. Blah, 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 blah. I get it. We always want to overreact. It's not what have you done before. It's what are you doing for me now? What have you done for me lately? Especially with a guy who just signed to a big free agent contract. But the big knock on him is, as it always will be until we're at least 2 years through Boston, he played in Coors. So I like what Trevor Story can do, but the problem with Story is pretty simple. He has always played in hitter-friendly ballparks. The Hall of Fame does look at that. Now, to me, the most likely player on the Red Sox to make the roster currently has yet to play for them this year, but that is going to be pitcher Chris Sale. Now, Chris Sale, this might be a little bit of a controversial pick to an extent, but Chris Sale, when he's healthy, is one of the better pitchers in baseball. He has a career stat line that has him at 114 wins, 74 losses, whatever. I know modern day wins and losses are going to be a lot lower than what we've seen in the past. It's just how pitchers are now. He has a 3.0 he's done. And you got to remember, his first couple years in the majors, he was called up when he was 21. So he was kind of used as a reliever, and he wasn't even like a closer until later on in that stretch. But he was good. Once he became a starter, he just kind of flew out of the gate, and he's been very consistent ever since. Yes, he didn't do that well in 2019, but you do have to remember that was the year he was dealing with an injury that ended up having him to get shut down early. He missed the entirety of 2020, and he missed the majority of 2021. But when he played in 2021, he was pretty good. He only made 9 starts, but he was still pretty good. So you got to consider that. Hopefully he comes back soon. But he does actually lead the league all time in strikeouts to walk ratio. He has 5.33 strikeouts for every walk he's issued. I like that in a pitcher. I definitely like that in a pitcher. It's what I want to see. It's the type of thing, it's the type of stat that I'd look at and say, okay, this is something that I like. He's clearly got great command, great control. He's striking out 16 guys for every 3 he walks. That is just, I love it. And you do have to remember, too, some of those losses that he's taken and even some of the wins that were left on the table were because he played for some bad teams when he was on the White Sox. So, next team we have is going to be the New York Yankees. So the Yankees have a lot of players that are honorable mentions and probably could be in the Hall of Fame at some point or another. So this is definitely going to be a fun team to look at, but first things first, let me just quickly rattle off some honorable mentions. Aroldis Chapman, he's not doing good right now. I get that. He's not doing good this year. He wasn't exactly amazing last year for a while. But Aroldis Chapman, I'm not thinking, 2020s. I'm thinking 2010s. He was such an important part in MLB history, just how quick he pitched and everything like that. He completely helped to change the game of baseball. Just bringing in the 104, 106 once in a blue moon, he hit it. So that's the exact thing that the league wants. It wants guys who help to change the game. So Aroldis has a shot. Obviously, he needs to start playing a little better. But Giancarlo Stanton, defensively, no, heck no. But when he's healthy, if he can stay healthy for another couple years and keep bashing at the level he's done when he's healthy, Giancarlo Stanton has a definite chance on making the Hall of Fame. He's just been another impact player, just like Aroldis Chapman. This is a player who, when he's healthy, he's just dealing. He's got the MVP award, I think. Could be wrong on that one. I think I am wrong on that one now that I said it. But anyway, I do like... He does have the MVP award. Okay, he did win it in 2017. He did win a Defensive Player of the Year award as well at one point, but nowadays his defense is atrocious. The problem with him is that he's 32 years old, and I just don't think he's got it. Those two guys, and another honorable mention is going to be Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole obviously was the best pitcher of the late 2010s. Maybe rivaled by Justin Verlander. Those two and Clayton Kershaw had like a great fight for who the best pitcher was at that point in time. I probably would actually give the edge to Verlander over both of them, and Kershaw probably over Cole. But ever since the sticky substance ban, Garrett Cole's numbers have been dwindling. He's been struggling a lot in these past couple years. Now, granted, he's still playing at a consistent level. It's just, you look at what Garrett Cole has done and what he's getting paid, and he's nowhere near living up to the expectations of his contract. So that's why Garrett Cole is an honorable mention. If he can, get past the sticky stuff, if he can do well, consistently play, if he can play at the duration of his entire contract and play at a high enough level, I definitely think he'll make the Hall of Fame, because the voters don't care about did he live up to his massive contract that the Yankees threw at him. They care about what are his numbers. Now, the one guy I think that's most likely to make the Hall of Fame from the Yankees is Josh I can't even say that one. Obviously, it's going to be Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, he has a very, very, very good chance of making the Hall of Fame once he makes it to his 10th season. Obviously, we're there with Mike Trout right now. We already got the 10th season, so Mike Trout's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But Aaron Judge is like the East Coast version of Mike Trout to an extent, with more power and a little less speed. He's a very likable character. Up here in the Northeast, we have a lot of people who don't like Aaron Judge because, we're a healthy mix of Boston and New York. But we have a lot of people who love Judge. You see, probably the jersey I see the most up here is Aaron Judge, just because every Yankees fan has an Aaron Judge jersey or a shirt or something. You have to represent Aaron Judge. He's such a fun character to be around. I mean, you have the Judge's Chambers when you're in New York at the ballpark. You have a whole section dedicated to him. He's a tall player. He can play defense. Maybe he's better suited for a DH role once Giancarlo Stanton's off the team. But for now, I love what he does. And a quick other honorable mention, Anthony Rizzo has been red hot in 2022. He had a great end to 2021. He's, of course, got the World Series, but he's not a Hall of Famer. Sorry, guys. Tampa Bay Rays. The Rays are this weird team that they have like 50,000 players on their team that are good but not great. So it's kind of an awkward situation with this team. Honestly, the only players that step up to me as potential Hall of Famers, I'm going to group two of these guys together right now, Shane McClanahan and Wander Franco. They're both great, extremely talented players that could be elite, probably should be considered elite for at least McClanahan right now, but they're both extremely young. They're both in their second years in the majors, although, I think McClanahan, I know Franco, I think McClanahan, both were called up last year and they didn't play the full year, so it's always scary as well to have a starting pitcher from the Rays in this list, but the way McClanahan's been pitching so far in 2022, He definitely deserves consideration. Franco hasn't been playing that well, but he does deserve the consideration at bare minimum. The last honorable mention from the Rays, Tyler Glasnow. Glasnow has been one of the best starting pitchers in the league when he's healthy in the past 5 years or so, but unfortunately he's currently out for the year due to Tommy John, so we don't know what's going to happen when he comes back. It's always a big change to come back from Tommy John surgery. Now, the most likely Hall of Famer that's currently on the Rays roster, Corey Kluber. Kluber has a very good shot at making the Hall of Fame, not because of what he did as a Yankee, not because of what he's done as a Ray, not because of what he did as a Ranger, but because of what he did when he was in Cleveland on the now Guardians. Corey Kluber has a great chance to make the Hall of Fame because while he doesn't have that World Series title that we would want, he's a talented player. I mean, let me quickly pull up. Yeah, so the stats, he does have 106 wins. He does have a 3.22 ERA, but he does have 2 Cy Young awards. He finished third twice as well. He's a talented player. It's just the problem with someone like Corey Kluber is he doesn't have the ring and his peak seems to have ended. So I don't think he'll make the Hall of Fame. It's just the Rays are a team that they don't have a lot of guys that are likely to make the Hall of Fame. Last team for the AL East, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. Blue Jays are a talented team as well, but they're also kind of a younger team. Honorable mentions, get these guys out of the way. Alek Manoah, same exact group as Shane McClanahan, extremely talented, breaking out this year, second year in the league, very young, too early to tell. Then you have, of course, other guys on the roster like Hyunjin Ryu. I like what he has done in the past. He's not a Hall of Famer. I just want to put his name out there. Same with Jose Barrios, not a Hall of Famer. Just want to put his name out there. Then you have the interesting group of players on the team. I'm going to have to put, I love the guy. I love these two guys, but I'm going to have to put them in the, runner-up category. Bo Bichette and Vlad Jr. I love what they both can do. And heck, I'll throw Matt Chapman in there too. Chapman, just for his defensive prowess, he's still not producing at an offensive level like you'd want him to. So Chapman has a lot to do to even get himself up. He will probably be dropped down into the category with Hyunjin Ryu as you were a good player. Bo Bichette is a great player. He isn't doing that hot in 2022 so far, but I do expect that he can turn it around. He was a highly regarded prospect for a reason. He has done great in the league before. Vlad Jr., to me, is the most likely player to make the Hall of Fame that is currently on the Blue Jays roster. The book is out on him right now. He hasn't been doing elite in 2022. He hasn't been doing that amazing in 2022, but he has kind of rebounded. He had that one game against the Yankees, got hit by a pitch in the hand early in the season. Then he hit 3 homers. And it took a while for him to kind of get back into shape. Now he's starting to hit some homers. I think it was last week, week 8 of the season. I guess week 9 if you count opening weekend as a week. He had, I think, 4 homers that week, which is good. He is starting to get his home run total up, which you need with Vlad. He does have a decent average, which is good. If he can kind of write himself, figure out the book, and kind of adjust his approach accordingly, he will make the Hall of Fame alongside his dad. And then I think the most likely Hall of Famer that's currently on the team is George Springer. I do like George Springer a lot. Springer obviously comes from the great state of Connecticut, so I will give him a little bit of a pass on the trash cans scandal. He's been playing well in Toronto when healthy, so that kind of helps him as well. I mean, guys like, that's why Correa left, that's why Correa left Houston, and that's why if Jose Altuve leaves Houston, it's going to help him too if he has a good season. But it's going to be tough for Springer because the trash can scandal will be hanging over his head for the rest of his career. Now we're going to the AL Central. We're going to start off with the Chicago White Sox. Now, the White Sox are a weird team as well. They have a lot of guys that I like. Honorable mentions, of course, Yasmani Grandal. Great catcher, not a Hall of Famer, though. Tim Anderson, if he can continue the pace that he started this year at and stretch it out for another 7 years, yes, but right now, not a Hall of Famer. Eloy Jimenez, extremely young, talented player, but can he stay healthy? These past 2 years, he's just been limping around, barely playing. When he's playing, he's good, but barely playing. If he can stay healthy, he has a real shot at making the Hall of Fame. But right now, it's too soon to tell. Yoan Moncada at one point would have been this discussion, but he has dropped off dramatically. I do like him, but Uh, Luis Robert, I love the guy. He's unfortunately somewhat in the same category as Eloy Jimenez, but he stayed healthy longer. And to me, and to a lot of people, he's a better player of the three, or of the two, by a lot. He can steal better. He has better power. He has a little worse power than Jimenez, but he has better power. So I do like Luis Robert. And the only other guy on this team that's an honorable mention is probably Lance Lynn, but no. Maybe Johnny Cueto, no. Lucas Giolito, too young, but there's a chance if he can right the ship from where he's currently been. He hasn't been doing that hot. To me, most likely Hall of Famer on this team, Jose Abreu, and it's not even close. Abreu does need to kind of right the ship. He is kind of trending in the wrong direction. I know he's in his mid-30s at this point, but he needs to get better soon. Otherwise, he's going to find himself on the outside of the Hall of Fame discussion 5 years after he retires. Cleveland Guardians. This is a team still in a bit of a rebuild, but I mean, I'll cheat here. I will mention him. Terry Francona will make the Hall of Fame soon. I don't know when he's going to make it, but Francona will be a Hall of Famer because of what he did in Boston, not because of Philly, and because of what he did in Cleveland. People like him for Cleveland and Boston, so he is a Hall of Famer to me. The other guys on this team, that there's only really two other players on this team that have a shot at make the Hall of Fame. Honorable mention, Shane Bieber. You guys know, if you watch the channel, I love Shane Bieber. He is turning it around. He had a rough year in 2021. He had a rough start to 2022. He has been turning it around of late, but still, despite how good he is, despite how much I like him, I'm not saying he's the best player because I'm not clueless. I do know that the best player on this team, far and away, most likely to make the Hall of Fame, Jose Ramirez. This guy has carried some rebuilding teams in Cleveland. He's the only player left from their core when they made the World Series back in 2016, and he's still playing at a high elite level. Jose Ramirez will be a Hall of Famer if he can keep up this pace, because he is just crushing the baseball right now as of, what's today, the 14th of June. Detroit Tigers. Tigers are another odd team when it comes to who do I think will make the Hall of Fame, because they're in a rebuild just like other teams that we've mentioned before, specifically Baltimore. Now, they have started to get some new players into the organization, but I really don't have a guy on this team that I think is a Hall of Famer at all. Like, there's a couple guys who are somewhat honorable mentions. Of course, Javier Baez is a guy who's an honorable mention, but I just don't think he strikes out too much. He doesn't have the elite power that you'd want with a guy who strikes out as much as he does. So I don't think he makes it. I do like players like Austin Meadows. He's a consistent player. It's just I don't think he will make the Hall of Fame either. Eduardo Rodriguez, no. AJ Hinch, the manager, ha ha. Yeah, the guy who literally got suspended for a year, no. So it's just, I don't see anyone. Spencer Torkelson probably has the best. Spencer Torkelson, who's the rookie, not doing that well right now. He has a chance, but he obviously needs to. I hate doing rookies, so we'll just say he has a chance if he can live up to his potential. Tariq Skubal, I do like what Tariq's done this year, but he still has a lot to prove. So I'd say the most likely player to make the Hall of Fame is Javier Baez, but slim. Kansas City Royals are another team that really doesn't have anyone that I love and think will make the Hall of Fame. There's good players. Well, actually, I'm sorry. They do have a guy that I know will make the Hall of Fame. When it comes to honorable mentions, though, the only two, there's three guys that come up. Bobby Witt Jr., rookie, have to mention him, top prospect. I do like what he can do. Carlos Santana definitely has a shot for what he did as a member of Cleveland's organization, but I think he's more of a Hall of Great, you were a great player for a decade, but he didn't put up those Hall of Fame numbers per se. Salvador Perez has a very good chance. I'd say he's over 50% of making the Hall of Fame. One of the best catchers of at least the 21st century so far. Obviously not the best. There's two guys that step up from the NL. One's retired, though. So it's going to be intriguing to watch how Salvi does, if he makes the Hall of Fame. If he can continue playing at the level he did last year, he will make the Hall of Fame. But it's just going to come down to that type of stuff. Like, how long can you stay playing at this high octane level? The most likely player to make the Hall of Fame, the guy who will make the Hall of Fame, Zach Greinke. Now, Greinke is not doing well in 2022. I know that. He didn't do well last year in 2021. I'm well aware of that. It's just, you look at the numbers that Greinke's put up over the course of his career, he's a Hall of Famer. 100%. He's currently dealing with an injury, but I mean, he's got a career WAR of 74 on the nose. He has, his ERA of 3.44 isn't great, but it has been tanked a bit by his past 3 seasons. You do have to consider that when you're looking at his numbers. Let me actually quickly pull up his numbers excluding these past couple years. And it doesn't want to work, of course. But he has solid numbers. He has a ERA of 3.35 if you exclude 2020, 2021, and 2022. So, like I said, his ERA has been tanked a bit. So, I like what he can do. I love what Greinke's done. Of course, off the field, I know he's not the nicest guy to be around. He's something, but it is what it is, you know. Minnesota Twins, last team in the AL Central. They are also in a bit of a rebuild. So, looking over this roster, the only guy on this team that I think has a chance to make the Hall of Fame, literally the only guy on the team that I think has a chance to make the Hall of Fame, Byron Buxton. Buxton is a great player. I love what he can do. When he's healthy, he can hit homers. He can steal bases. He can stretch a single into a double, a single into a triple. He can stretch a double into an inside the park home run. I just love his speed. It's not like he sells out. It's not like all he does is have speed. He has great power. So when he's healthy, and if he can stay healthy for a decade, he will make the Hall of Fame. No doubt in my mind. Honorable mention, Carlos Correa. But you know, you look at in Houston, he was the biggest beneficiary of playing in Houston versus on the road in that time. And we haven't seen him playing that well in Minnesota. So I'm not 100% sold on him. Now we're finally in the AL West, starting off with the aforementioned Houston Astros. So Houston, I mean, we all know their most likely Hall of Famer is a surefire Hall of Famer in Justin Verlander. I don't know if Verlander is going to go in the Hall as a Tiger or if he's going to go in with no hat on and be an Astro and a Tiger. But Justin Verlander is a Hall of Famer. You can already mark that down. Unless all of a sudden a steroid scandal comes up, Justin Verlander will be enshrined in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame the first year he's eligible. I can all but guarantee that. If it's not the first year, I will be absolutely stunned and shocked. And I will be upset with Major League Baseball. I'm already upset with how they've handled certain situations with other players. So, anyways, he will be a Hall of Famer. Verlander is probably the best pitcher of my lifetime that I've, seen his whole career, far and away. He might be the best pitcher of the past maybe 50 years, maybe, just by how he's done, both in the longevity and everything like that, not just peak. So, other guys on this team that have a shot to make the Hall of Fame, Michael Brantley's been a very consistent, underrated player for his entire career. He can hit for average. He doesn't offer elite power. He doesn't offer speed, but he hits for a good average. He's consistently just overlooked. I just wanted to shout him out here. I do like what he's done. Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman are both grouped together here. I do like what both of them have done. I used to be huge and love Altuve as a player. But now that the trash can scandals come out, both these guys, their career numbers have taken a hit. Bregman in particular, he's really started to struggle since the scandal. I know he's had injuries in the past, but still, it is worth noting. Altuve is playing better than Bregman. I know in May he was one of the better players in baseball, but you still have to be a little skeptical on what he's done. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when the first main player from this group of the Hall of Famers, or potential Hall of Famers from the Astros 2017 team retires, I do think it would be Altuve. I want to see how the voters approach him. That's going to be interesting. Kyle Tucker, Yordan Alvarez, both honorable mentions, both extremely young, talented players that can hit the ball, they can crush the ball. Alvarez probably has the edge right now, definitely has the edge on Tucker. I do think they both have a shot to make the Hall of Fame. It's just easier said than done. Definitely easier said than done. Los Angeles Angels. Mike Trout will make the Hall of Fame, 100%. We know this. Why do I even want to go into discussing it? He is arguably the best player of all time right now. So, I mean, if you want to debate who's the GOAT in baseball, I know plenty of people will say Mike Trout, and then you always have the people say, oh, recency bias or whatever. Mike Trout is one of the best players. The way he swings the bat would have carried over into the dead ball era even. The way he holds himself, he could have played in the steroid juice era. He could have played in the 60s. He could have played in any era. You know, excluding 1860s, 1870s, when the game was completely different and unrecognizable compared to today. But Mike Trout, I'd say he's currently the second best player all time behind Ty Cobb. So, with the Mike Trout guaranteed Hall of Fame spot out of the way, the only other couple players on this team that I think have a shot on the Hall of Fame, obviously, Shohei Ohtani. Shohei had a Babe Ruth-esque season, arguably better than anything, definitely better than anything Ruth ever did, in a single season. He was an elite starting pitcher and the best hitter in the sport. He ran away with AL MVP. It wasn't even funny. It wasn't even close. And that was one of the best, most heated MVP discussions we've ever had in the history of baseball. We just had three guys right there, right at the top of their game. It was amazing to see Ohtani. He just ran away with it. And I mean, Vlad Guerrero Jr. had a season that probably would have had him run away with the AL MVP in most other years. So, just worth noting. And then, of course, I do have to mention Anthony Rendon. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I do think he has a shot if he can play at 2019 Washington Nationals level. Next, we have the Oakland Athletics. This is a team that literally has given away everyone that is worth anything to them. So, the only guy on this team that I think even has a chance to make the Hall of Fame is Frankie Montas. But Montas is not a Hall of Famer right now. He'd have to be elite for another decade. He had one good year, but then he had a PED suspension, and now he's been okay since. So, Oakland, your best chance of getting a Hall of Famer is having someone like Josh Donaldson make the Hall of Fame and say, yeah, I'll go in as an athletic. Or, Donaldson's probably the best name right now. Maybe Chapman. Matt Olson, I think, will definitely go in as Atlanta when he makes the Hall of Fame, if he does make the Hall of Fame. So, yeah. Seattle Mariners. Well, Mariners, obviously, I'm going to mention him even though he's retired. Ichiro will make the Hall of Fame as a Mariner, so you will get a Hall of Famer soon. No worries about that. Outside of Ichiro, though, because we're doing guys on the active roster, there really isn't anyone who comes to mind. I mean, there's two guys that you can maybe make a case for. The first is Robbie Ray, but Robbie Ray is a guy that I've always been skeptical of. I used to like Robbie Ray back when he was on the Diamondbacks, but he started to become overblown, and then you started to see his true colors. He wasn't that great. He went and last year managed to win the Cy Young, seemingly out of the blue in the AL East, and then Seattle threw a ton of money at him, and he is not doing good this year at all. So, Robbie Ray, to me, I don't think he's going to make it. Quickly pull up the stats for him. I mean, you look at him last year, he had a 2.84 ERA, 13-7 record. He was dominant, led the league in strikeouts with 248. But the problem for him, look at this year. He's got a 4.52 ERA. He's almost added 2 full runs to his ERA. And I know ERA isn't everything. His FIP tells a slightly different story, and it's that, he's 1 run worse than last year, but still, it's worth noting he's not a guy that I'm a huge fan of. He does get a good amount of strikeouts per 9 innings pitched. He does have the best record, actually, in MLB history at 11.1 strikeouts per 9 innings pitched, but that can always change, so we don't know how that's going to work out. He's just, to me, a guy who had one elite year. And then the other Mariner who has a shot, Julio Rodriguez. I love Julio Rodriguez. Great contact guy. Leads the league in stolen bases right now. Problem with Julio, he's a rookie. So, last team we have here is the Texas Rangers for today's video because I am definitely not going to make this a full hour plus. So, Texas Rangers are an interesting team. They are kind of still in a rebuild, but they're also at the point where they're getting out of the rebuild. Just like Detroit, they got some players in free agency this year, but none of these guys on the team are like free or Hall of Famers to me. The only player on the team that has a shot to make the Hall of Fame right now is going to be, no, there's two, but honorable mention, Marcus Semien. Good player to me. Good, not great. I don't think he makes the Hall of Fame, but anything can happen. Anything can happen. And then, of course, we have Corey Seager, who's the most likely of the duo. Seager does have the ring from his time in LA. He has great numbers from his time in LA. He's not doing that great this year, though. Semien's definitely outperforming him, which is not saying much. I mean, neither of them are doing that great. So we'll have to see what happens with how Texas handles it. But I do think that Marcus Semien and Corey Seager have shots at making the Hall of Fame. It's just going to be, will one of them make it? But anyways, this was my AL predictions for who I think will make the Hall of Fame for each team, most likely to make it, and then the honorable mentions, of course. Now, of course, I know some of my picks might be a little controversial, I guess, but I'm just looking at who I think on each team has the best chance on making it. I mean, I'm sure someone might say, I think Shane Bieber has a better chance than Jose Ramirez. I would respectfully disagree with you, but, I mean, I could definitely see people telling me Luis Robert has a better chance than Jose Abreu, but again, I would respectfully disagree with you there. So, Yankees might be a tough one. I'm sure some people will tell me Garrett Cole over Aaron Judge. I'm sure of it. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely have a good rest of your day. Stay safe out there.